Good morning. I have two short readings for you. The first is called The Ladder. This is an excerpt from a book called How Al-Anon Works for Families and Friends of Alcoholics. It's on pages 374 to 375 if you're interested. Before finding recovery for myself, it was as if my loved one with the addiction were standing at the bottom of a ladder, and I was right behind, urging, begging, and pleading for them to climb it. As they began their ascent, I propped myself behind them, pushing them up with all my might. With each unsteady step they took, I pushed all the harder. Eventually, when they lost their grip and fell, I fell too, cushioning the blow. As they got up and climbed again, I was right underneath, all the more concerned that they hold on tight. Each time they slipped and tumbled, I fell beneath them and took the brunt once more. Injured and sore, I went to my first support group meeting. I began to notice that other people's loved ones weren't even holding on tightly or being careful with their footing. Why should they? They had fallen several times without sustaining injury. And of course, we fell once again. Then I noticed that next to this ladder was another one, a ladder with my name on it. I picked myself up off the ground, walked over, and began to climb it. Although I was concerned about my loved one, I realized that they must climb their own ladder by themselves. My attempts to help had only hindered. As I climbed my own ladder, I discovered that it requires a great deal of concentration and strength to move up. I can't effectively climb while keeping an eye on the other ladder. So I focus on my own climb, up the rungs, and let my loved one focus on their climb. If they fall, I will empathize, but I will not be injured. Their own injuries may help convince them to hold on tighter. Their success or failure in climbing out of the pit of addiction is their responsibility. Whether or not I climb up is up to me. The next reading I'll be referencing again when I speak to you shortly, but it's called Welcome to Holland. It's by Emily Pearl Kingsley. When you're planning your family, it's like planning a fabulous vacation. Let's say a trip to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks and make your wonderful plans. The Colosseum, Michelangelo's David, the gondolas in Venice. You may learn some handy phrases in Italian. It's all very exciting. After years of eager anticipation, the day finally comes. You pack your bags and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. The flight attendant gets on the loudspeaker and says, "Welcome to Holland." Holland, do you say? What do you mean, Holland? I signed up for Italy. All my life, I've dreamed of going to Italy. But there's been a change in the flight plan. You've landed in Holland, and there you must stay. The important thing is that they haven't taken you to a horrible, disgusting, filthy place full of pestilence and famine. It's just a different place. So you go out and you buy new guidebooks. You must learn a whole new language, and you will meet a whole new group of people you would never have met. It's just a different place. It's more stressful, more unpredictable, but after you've been there for a while and you catch your breath, you look around, you begin to notice that Holland has windmills. Holland has tulips. Holland even has Rembrandts. But everyone around you is busy coming and going from Italy and bragging about what a wonderful time they had there. And for the rest of your life, you'll say, "Yes, that's where I wanted to go. At least that's what I planned." And the pain of that loss will never go away, because the loss of that dream is a very significant loss. But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't get to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy a very special family that you found in Holland. Hello again. My name is Kim Porter. I use she, her pronouns. I'm really honored to be with you today. Thank you for having me. I'm lucky to be joined by my colleague and friend Judy Hirsch, she works with our organization and kind of met her in Holland, you could say. My remarks are titled Finding Unexpected Gifts in the Wake of Addiction. It's estimated that nearly half of us have at least one family member or close friend who have been addicted to drugs or alcohol. Half of us. I happen to have a few family members who qualify me to be in that half of the population. For one, I have a 91-year-old dad who thankfully found recovery from alcoholism 25 years ago. By the time my father was in recovery, I had 2 young children and a great life. So like many parents, I envisioned all kinds of hopeful scenarios for my kids, all that Norman Rockwell stuff. When my son was 21, it had become painfully clear that he was addicted to drugs and alcohol. How did this happen? All those plans, those hopes, dreams, expectations for my son's health and happiness went out the window. College was no longer on the table. Independence, adulthood, he simply wasn't well enough to take care of himself. How did we miss this progression? How did our family get here? Welcome to Holland. This is the reason I selected that reading to share with you earlier. Welcome to Holland is about all those dashed expectations, those dreams that would never be realized. We weren't going to Italy, even though that was the plan. That was what we had in mind. And now I had to learn to speak a new language. I had to learn to love my son differently. My love for him had become contaminated by fear. That fear impaired my brain. It impaired my judgment, my objectivity, my sense of self-worth, my mental health. It impaired the way I loved my son. My instinct was to keep him safe and protect him, and yet I was loving him to death. I had to learn to speak a new language. Virginia Satir was an author and psychotherapist who worked a lot with families, and I really like something that she said. I want to love you without clutching, appreciate you without judging, join you without invading, invite you without demanding, leave you without guilt, criticize you without blaming, and help you without insulting. I had to learn to speak a new language. How would I learn this new language now that I was in this foreign territory? It didn't really help that I had experience with my dad's alcoholism, because it's different when you're a mom. It's just different. How would I learn to speak this new language? Fortunately, I found out that the best teachers imaginable were the countless other families who came before me. It turns out there's an entire world out here rife with professionals who understand and treat addiction, support groups with people who have walked down this path and know it well, thousands of books that help to illuminate what our loved one and we are going through. Today, I'm honored to serve other families by sharing this new language that I've learned. By the way, I still slip into Italian now and then. We're all still learning, but we don't have to do it alone. If you're in Holland, you might as well spend your time with people who know their way around. I'm grateful that I can share with you that Daniel, that's my son, agreed to enter treatment when he was 21 years old. That was March of 2010. He's 34 now, and he's remained in recovery ever since. Last month, I had the joyful experience of seeing Daniel get married on a mountaintop in Colorado, surrounded by friends and family, and a wonderful new wife, Chloe, who happens to be a therapist. Score. In her vows to Daniel, Chloe said that his sobriety was one of the many things she loved about him. At the reception, the DJ was a man named Chris. Chris has been my son's friend since high school, and he was a vital part of the intervention that we had for Daniel 13 years ago. Chris gave a speech at the wedding reception. You can actually toast without alcohol, it turns out. And he decided to make us all cry by reading this segment from his 2010 intervention letter. Daniel, the reality is that if you don't change your path, time will take us further apart and we'll lose touch. I want to come and visit you 10 years from now, wherever you are, doing something you love. It was crazy. Many individuals in recovery often say that they have a life beyond their wildest dreams. I know my son feels that way. I may not have envisioned words like sobriety and intervention letter being part of my children's wedding back when I was planning that idyllic trip to Italy, but I am beyond grateful for this new language that has become part of our collective family's lives. When I look back on the years that Daniel was using drugs and alcohol, I can see so clearly now that our family was broken. There was so much I didn't understand. I felt shame, confusion, anger, grief, and above all, fear. This was not a great state of mind to be in at a time when I was sure I could convince him that he needed to stop. And if I couldn't stop him, he would die. As if I, a terrified mom in uncharted territory, could control a disease that a century of medical research and treatment has yet to eradicate. What I have learned these past 13 years is that while we may not be able to heal our loved one, we as family members can heal. We can heal from the fear of being judged, from the chaos and trauma we have experienced, from the broken relationships, broken hearts, and the broken spirit that often accompanies addiction. This is a tall order, but I've seen families heal over and over and over again. I'm blessed to have been in the company of hundreds, if not thousands, of family members this past decade. Through my work, I'm privileged to join with others in helping to educate families, teachers, community leaders, congregants, and healthcare professionals. And we family members are connecting with one another. We're finding resources that we never thought we would need and that we may not have even realized existed. We're crossing paths with other families who we never would have met, but we are brought together by a shared concern and a hunger for information and support. And it's those connections that help us to heal. All that brokenness that families experience because of addiction is not because of the person who is addicted. The brokenness comes from the symptoms of the addiction: lying, manipulation, and anger. These are actually necessary for our loved one to keep us at a distance, to keep us from getting in the way of their continued use, because they cannot breathe without that drink or drug. I've heard this described by individuals in recovery many times. I needed help understanding these very confusing behaviors, and I'm so grateful for a suggestion that was made to me shortly after Daniel found recovery. The suggestion was to write a letter to his addiction, not a letter that Daniel would ever read, and it wasn't directed at him. The letter was meant to be directed toward his addiction. I found the exercise incredibly cathartic and have recommended it dozens of times to other family members over the years. After recommending it so many times to others, I recently decided it was time to check in with Daniel's addiction. So I wrote another letter. I'd like to close by sharing a portion of that letter. To my son's addiction. I've conflicting feelings about you. When I first met you, I absolutely hated you. You stole my son from me. You infected my kind, loving, sensitive boy and sickened him to the point of becoming emaciated, deceitful, and distant. You stripped away any evidence of the love he had for his family or true friends. I desperately tried to figure you out. What was this deadly grip you had on my child? I will always hate you for the years you stole from us, the sleepless nights, the tension in our family, the sideways looks from acquaintances who undoubtedly judged us all. I hate that you not only tried to kill my son, but you inflicted tremendous pain on my daughter at a vulnerable and critical time in her young life. You made me question my capacity to protect my children. Over these past several years, I've learned quite a lot about you. In fact, understanding you and helping others to understand you has become my passion, my mission, and the most rewarding work of my life. Learning about you and examining your manifestations may have caused me to hate you even more, because I now understand how cunning, baffling, and powerful you truly are. You cannot be eradicated, but you can be wrestled into remission. I don't know why you exist, but I know that you most assuredly do exist, rooted in the brains of many more people than I ever imagined, including my own. The reason I feel conflicted about you is because, paradoxically, your abduction of my son ushered in some of the greatest gifts in his life. It is difficult to imagine where his life would be today if it weren't for you. I guess it wasn't really you who produced all the wonderful things in his life. Rather, it was my son's diligent and transformative work to recover from you that brought so much awareness, depth, and authenticity into his life. Your poisonous seed was planted into this valuable young man at such an early age. How long had you been there, waiting to wreak havoc? And yet, from those perilous origins, a caring, creative, and warm-hearted man has emerged. My son's recovery from you has brought him back to us and allowed him to welcome love into his life. Where would he be living today if not for you? Would he be as physically, mentally, and spiritually healthy? We'll never know, but how could I possibly want more for him than the beautiful life he has today, even with the detritus left in your wake? You remain my fiercest enemy, but I rejoice in the knowledge that your grip on my child and my family has been replaced by the loving hand of recovery and fellowship. You have unwittingly bestowed upon me the acquaintance and friendship of hundreds of people I would never have encountered under less daunting circumstances. These are the unexpected gifts of my desperation, for which I'll be forever grateful. Thank you.